Oh, my microphone wasn't on, sorry. We are starting our meeting at the Washington State Gambling Commission hybrid meeting. We're in person at the Washington State Liquor Cannabis Board at 9:30 a.m. Today's meeting will be recorded and live streaming through TVW. So Director Griffin, can you go ahead and call the roll of the commission members to ensure a quorum?
Yes, Vice Chair Patterson. Commissioner Reeves. Commissioner Lawson. I have a hand. Julie Anderson, we have a hand up, raised. Maybe we're having some mic issues.
It's Commissioner Lawson and Commissioner Patterson.
Okay.
They just need to unmute.
Commissioner Lawson and Patterson, are you able to unmute, or are we having some sort of difficulties?
I'm able to unmute now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Lawson. Commissioner Patterson, Vice Chair Patterson. Okay. And I'll call, so Commissioner Sizemore, I believe, is out. He's not able to attend. I just want to make sure. And then Chair Levy is here. Commissioner Reeves and Commissioner Patterson. So we'll need to wait because we do not have a quorum. We do have Senator Conway. Thank you. Thank you. Senator Holy. I see you. Thank you. Representative Kloba. I believe she was not able to attend today. And Representative Vick. AG Becker.
I'm here.
Thank you. So would you like to wait a few minutes to see if we can't?
Yeah. We'll try to get a hold of Commissioner Reeves and Commissioner Patterson maybe, and be on mute for a minute. And
I texted both of them.
Should we take like a 5-minute?
we'll take a 5-minute break. Yeah. See if we can get everybody here.
Commissioner Patterson, can you unmute on your computer, please? She is unable to unmute.
Oh. Room is still live. You want to
Okay, I think we have everyone. Apologies for the technical difficulties, but we're going to go ahead and have Commissioner Lawson and Commissioner Reeves just come on camera if they can, to make sure we have everyone. Okay, Commissioner Lawson, we have you, and Commissioner Reeves. All right, so we have a quorum. Sorry about that, everybody. Where were we? Okay, so during the meeting, we will accept public comment. If you'd like to submit public comment via email, please submit it to askus@wsgc.wa.gov. If you have any questions regarding the meeting, please contact Julie Anderson at julie.anderson@wsgc.wa.gov. The telephone lines are currently muted. When I ask for public comment, please unmute your line, provide your comment, and then remute your phone. Please do not interrupt individuals who are speaking. Each person will have the opportunity to comment. And when you provide your comment, please clearly state your name, your contact information if you'd like to receive a summary of all comments and who you are representing. All right, so I think now we are at the consent agenda. So there's one change to the minutes from July 25th, 2022. We're going to change that all references to a virtual meeting be changed to hybrid instead within those minutes. So is there any comment on the consent agenda?
Madam Chair, this is Commissioner Patterson. Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
I don't know if you can see me, but at least you can hear me now. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. All right, so it doesn't sound like we have any comments. Is there any comments in the email? All right, can we get a motion then to approve the consent agenda?
This is Commissioner Patterson. I'll move that we approve the consent agenda as presented by staff today.
Do we have a second?
This is Commissioner Lawson. I'll second.
Okay, and we can go ahead and do a vote. Everybody in favor say aye.
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 Commissioner Reeves just got kicked out.
To what?
I think she said Commissioner Reeves is not.
Okay, we still have enough.
So yes, you have 3.
Okay,
You have a quorum.
so now we'll go to the director's report. Director Griffin?
Thank you. So I'm happy to announce. So I'm happy to announce that we have a new deputy director, Chris Wilson, and we have assistant director, Gary Drumheller, and both started on September 6th. And we also then implemented the reorganizational structure that was part of the packet last month. And so we will move to begin recruiting for the legislative and policy manager, as well as the legal manager in September. Then also wanted to report that at the October 7th meeting of the commission, the commission will be working on developing the agency's 2023 and 2028 strategic plan. And in preparation for the strategic plan development, tomorrow staff will be meeting with tribal partners at 9 and licensees at 11. Really encourage participation to help us assist providing us with your insight on the opportunities and threats that may impact the commission's ability to achieve future goals. And so we'll summarize that feedback, as well as bring some more information to the commissioners at their October 7th meeting, along with the budget presentation on the 6th, to help them through the development of the 2023-2028 goals for the agency. And then also just wanted to report, we have in the last few weeks, Lummi Nation and the Tulalip Tribe of Indians opened their sports books. So now we have 10 tribes operating sports wagering operations. All of those, except for the most part, they are all on premise. Excuse me, of course they're on premises, but on premise at the sports book. I believe there's just one facility that is operating mobile to a limited number of players at this time. And then electronic raffles, staff just recently issued temporary raffle licenses, so they'll be in your packet for approval next month, but issued the temporary licenses within the last week or so to the Seattle Seahawks Charitable Foundation and One Roof. And so staff completed on-site reviews of the electronic equipment at Lumen Field and Climate Pledge Arena this last week, and made sure that the nonprofits are all set for launch. They will launch at Lumen Field on September 12th, the Seahawk game, and later this month at the opening game of the Kraken at Climate Pledge Arena. And just a little reminder, raffles will need to continue to be operated under the RCW that requires the manual drawing. And those rules went into effect in November that authorized the electronic raffle system for nonprofit organizations that are affiliated with professional sporting events at home games. Those went into effect in November of 2021. And so we'll have more information for you at your next meeting. And that, then we did have meet WSGC staff this morning before the commission meeting. We had about 50 participants, staff, as well as licensees and tribal partners. And we have quite a few people here in the audience. And so that was a great opportunity to really introduce Chris. And I would encourage everyone to take a look at the packet with his bio, as well as Gary Drumheller in their new roles, and then also have an opportunity to just engage with staff, find out their backgrounds and what that new organizational structure looks like, and engage in conversation with them. We'll do that quarterly. That seemed to be the feedback that we got. And just look forward to having continued communication with stakeholders and tribal partners. Thank you. That's all I have.
Great, thank you for that, Director Griffin, and welcome, Chris, and congratulations to Gary. I look forward to working with you both more. Excited to have you with the agency. Next up is Tommy Oakes with our agency request legislation. Hello, Tommy.
Good morning. Good morning, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, Commissioners and ex officios. For the record, my name is Tommy Oakes, and I'm the interim legislative liaison for the Gambling Commission. I'm here to talk to you about our agency request legislation. So today is the day that we're asking for final approval to move forward to the governor's office, our agency request legislation regarding law enforcement training. Just to kind of go backwards a little bit, just to kind of get everybody on the same page. It's been a long process. We started this in December when we found out the academy wasn't going to be training due to their interpretation of Second Substitute Senate Bill 5051. And in that bill, it was certification and training. Limited law enforcement agencies were left off this bill. And so we've been working with this since December to try and come with some kind of solution. And I will applaud the commission that you've pushed us forward to take the lead on this. We've been working with a lot of other agencies, such as Department of Natural Resources, Office of Insurance Commissioner, Liquor Cannabis Board, and state parks, which are all limited law enforcement agencies, to get this going, to figure out how we can come up with a solution. So the bill before you that we're asking to move forward, staff's asking to move forward, has to do with training and certification. And what this bill will do is put us into the training requirements and basically require us to be trained. A little bit of history, it was something that I learned when I got here 5 years ago. Limited law enforcement actually is not required to do training. The fact that the Gambling Commission and all these other agencies were doing training was just basically because they decided to do that. There is no state law that says they have to be trained. There's nothing to that extent. This bill fixes that. This bill now mandates that all law enforcement officers are trained to a standard. And also it'll now put us in a certification process. And what that means is basically law enforcement officers will have a license, just like a doctor or just like anybody else. And limited law enforcement officers will be responsible for their conduct, and they'll be held accountable to a standard that they have to, the commissioners, CJTC, Criminal Justice Training Commission, will hold our officers to as well. So it kind of goes, it goes off of the police reform. This is kind of the feedback when I was watching a lot of the feedback when 5051 was first instituted, was that law enforcement officers need to be held to a standard and they need to be held accountable. Now we are going to be joining, our request is to be joined in that group. So that's what you have before you, and that's pretty much what this is this certification and training for limited law enforcement.
It's regional.
Let me see if there's other things. We reached out to, we put this out to all of our tribal partners. We put this out to stakeholders. We've met with several groups, law enforcement groups, to discuss this. I can tell you that CJTC is in support of this. I can tell you that WASPIC's in support of this. I can tell you that we have not received any negative feedback from any legislators or anybody else. They're happy that we're actually voluntarily coming into compliance. So I'm really excited about that. And I'll put it before you today. I'm obviously available for any questions, but to move forward so that we can submit this to the governor's office, what I'm requesting.
All right, thank you, Tommy. Appreciate that. Are there any comments, questions from any commissioners? Okay, I don't see anything. Is there any public comment? There's nothing in the email. Okay, do we have a motion then?
Madam Chair, this is Commissioner Patterson. Are you ready for a motion?
Yes, please. If you don't have any comments.
Okay, so thank you. I move to approve the agency request legislation as presented by Tommy Oakes, and to authorize our legislative liaison, Tommy, to make any non-substantive technical changes as needed, and to support the bill through the legislative process.
Okay, do we have a second?
This is Commissioner Lawson. I'll second.
Thank you. Is there any comments? Any discussion now? Okay, then we can take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 All right, the motion passes. Thank you. And thank you, Tommy. I know you've put in a lot of work on this, so we appreciate that. And yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so next up, we have a presentation by Roxanne Waldron from on the Problem Gambling Task Force. Is Roxanne here?
I haven't seen her.
You haven't seen.
Oh, she's here, but she is muted.
Oh. Can someone unmute her?
Good morning. I'm here.
Good morning, thank you.
Thanks. Can I share my screen? Would that work?
Roxanne, this is Julie Anderson. I have your PowerPoint up.
Okay.
Can you see it?
I can see it. Okay, but okay, so you're going to just click through the slides then?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, let's get started. All right, well, thank you for having me here. For the record, I'm Roxanne Waldron, manager at the State Problem Gambling Program within the Healthcare Authority. And I want to thank you, Chair Levy, and commissioners and ex officios for inviting me here to present to you today. I see on the agenda that my presentation is titled Problem Gambling Task Force Update. I'll touch briefly on where the task force is in its work, as well as a few highlights from the 2021 Washington State Adult Problem Gambling Prevalence Study. And in my last slides, I'll share some information from national and international experts on what consumer protections they suggest that states in general should be considering as they legalize commercial sports wagering. So next slide, please. So briefly on this timeline, you will see the orange star. This is where we are in our process. We're very close to wrapping up our work. We're in the, all of our work groups have met. We've come up with a set of recommendations, which the task force is currently working through, and we're writing and editing the final recommendations report, which is due to the legislature this November. So as this work is going on, over at HCA, I'm working with Dr. Rachel Volberg on the final prevalence study report. The due date to legislature was extended to no later than the end of October. At the Healthcare Authority, we found that we needed some additional data analysis and time to prepare this report. So once the prevalence study report is delivered to the legislature, I'll send the website link and the PDF to the Gambling Commission as well. Next slide, please. So just a reminder that we surveyed 49,000 households, and we received over 9,400 responses, which was about a 19% response rate, which was right in the area where we were hoping to get. As you know, the areas of focus are listed here: beliefs and attitudes about gambling, gambling behavior and preferences, awareness of treatment services, the level of risk for problem gambling within Washington State residents, and then the overlap with the prevalence of mental health and substance use issues. And then the Problem Gambling Task Force added a sixth area of focus, which was online gambling. This was added because of it hadn't been included before in any of the prevalence studies, and it has implications for problem gambling services. So the study was conducted during the COVID-19 pandemic in summer of 2021, with questions being asked about the previous 12-month period. And that period did include the mandatory lockdowns and closures of brick and mortar gambling venues for several months. So this impact on the gambling environment, as well as the respondents, had to be taken into account during the data analysis phase. Next slide, please. Okay. So first, I'm going to share results on 2 belief and opinion questions. I thought this might be of interest to the commission. So the question was, which best describes your opinion about gambling opportunities in Washington State? And the possible responses were: it's too widely available, it's not available enough, or current availability is fine. So this pie chart shows the responses for everyone who completed the survey, whether they gambled or did not gamble. So the dark green shows that about 2/3 said that the current availability of gambling is fine. In the blue section, a little under 1/3 said that gambling is not, it is too widely available. And then the little light green slice is the 5% that said that gambling is not available enough. However, in our analysis, those that are at moderate to high risk for problem gambling, among those, a much larger percentage said that the gambling is not enough, almost 17% compared to 5% for everyone. So among non-gamblers, so those that didn't gamble, only 2.3% said that gambling isn't available enough. So the takeaway on this is that respondents that gambled, and especially those at risk for problem gambling, were more likely to say that gambling is not available enough. Next slide, please. So this question asked about what best describes your belief about the benefit or harm that gambling has for society. Possible responses included that the harms outweigh the benefits outweigh the harms, where the harms and benefits to society are about equal. So this pie chart shows, again, for all respondents, both those that gambled and those that did not. In the blue section, close to 2/3 said that the harms of gambling outweigh the benefits, about 1/4 saying that the benefits are about equal, and then almost 8% saying that the benefits outweigh the harms. And again, in our analysis, this is for all adults, we found that while 77% of non-gamblers said that the harms outweigh the benefits, for folks that gamble, only 56 said that the harms outweigh the benefits. So the takeaway on this is that the more that people gamble, the more likely they are to see the benefits of gambling as greater than the harms. So next slide, please. Okay. So one of the questions that we asked was about the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on gambling. We wanted to have a sense of this as we were doing our data analysis, and also to see how this compared with other states. So this was, again, self-reported. So for the portion of people who gambled, we asked about the impact. And so that's specific to those who gambled only. 71% reported that the COVID pandemic had no impact on their gambling behavior. 25% said they gambled less, and 4% said they gambled more. So again, this makes sense because during that time, card rooms and casinos were closed for several months. Although I do want to point out that lottery sales did significantly increase, and it's possible that illegal online gambling may also have increased when people were in lockdown. I just want to remind folks that the study was conducted before legal sports wagering opened at tribal casinos. So next slide, please. Okay, so this slide, the next couple of slides are going to be about the prevalence of gambling and problem gambling. First, we're going to look at all adults. This is, there are two important prevalence rates that folks look at in problem gambling. What is the prevalence of gambling? And then within that, the prevalence of problem gambling. So this is looking at the whole population. And this includes, as I said, both those that gambled and those that did not during that 12 months period, which was summer of 2020 to summer of 2021. So based on our additional data analysis, these findings are more precise than what I have shared earlier in the, I think it was back in May or June. I may have shared this, I've shared it in some venues. So in the dark blue, 56% did not gamble. The light green, which includes the little slice of purple together, is the 43.5% that did gamble. This is a considerably smaller percentage than we would normally expect during a non-COVID year. We would expect it to be closer to 60 to 70%. And that little purple slice that is included in those that gambled, that is the 1.5% that were at risk for moderate to severe problem gambling or gambling disorder. And that 1.5% is exactly the same percentage that the Oregon study that was recently conducted found. They recently conducted a study looking at how COVID impacted gambling and problem gambling. So in the next slide, we're just going to look at the green and purple slices of the pie. So only those people who gambled, and within that, the percentage of people at a greater risk for problem gambling. So next slide, please. So this pie chart shows only those that gambled. This is that 43.5% that was in the last slide. This is broken out by risk levels for problem gambling. There's not currently at risk, at low risk, or at moderate to high risk for problem gambling. When we talk about moderate to high risk, that's what we're calling problem gambling. On the extreme side, end of that, severe end of that would be gambling disorder. So I just want to point out that if someone said they gambled in this survey, this is not a measure of frequency or intensity. There's no stigma attached to this. Unfortunately, there is stigma, as we know, attached sometimes to gambling within society. This is a measure of participation. You could have purchased a lottery ticket sometime during the year, or you could be in, casinos or card rooms 5 days a week. It's not a measure of frequency or intensity. When we get into problem gambling, the questions that determine that do look at those. So among those who gambled, almost 80% of people are not currently at risk for problem gambling. 17% are at low risk, and 3.5% are at moderate to high risk. And this is on the high end of the range we normally would see in studies between 2 and 4% in research studies. 3.5% is on the high end. Again, it's 3.5% of all those who gamble. And then in the previous slide, we saw it was 1.5% of all adults. Again, those at low risk are in this gray area of concern, and this percentage should be considered when developing prevention and treatment messaging, because some of those folks, may never have an issue. Others may move into that moderate to high risk for problem gambling. So next slide, please. Okay, so a very important part of our survey was to determine, who is at the greatest risk for problem gambling. So what we found was that despite that there is no difference in gambling participation between white and non-white, or as we say, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, which I'm going to say BIPOC, there's no difference in gambling participation. We did find that Black, Indigenous, and people of color or non-white are at more than double the risk than white. The risk for quote unquote white is 2.8 and for BIPOC is 6%. So this is a really important finding and has health equity implications, including for prevention and other services. This finding is not unexpected and reflects the known disparities in social and economic determinants of health within these communities, like increased poverty, lack of opportunity and access to resources, worse health outcomes in some cases. These issues need to be at the top of the list for action to be addressed as we move forward within our work at Healthcare Authority. And I just want to note also, this was interesting. In the study, analysts were not able to detect a higher risk from having a physical disability, one's age, one's marital status or military status, employment status, or what region of the state they lived in. But this may mean that due to the smaller size of some of these respondent subgroups, we couldn't detect a statistically significant difference in this study. So this is always an issue with the size of the study. We had a quite large study, but because problem gambling is at small slices, when we actually look at the numbers themselves, if the numbers are not large enough, we can't say with certainty that it's a significant finding. So if we did a survey that was, 10 times the size that we did, we may be able to find these differences, but we were not able to detect them. It doesn't mean they aren't there. Next slide, please. Great. Okay. So for the first time, as I mentioned, in a Washington State adult problem gambling prevalence study, we asked people who gambled if they gambled online. And again, I want to remind you that all the gambling online that happened and was reported in this survey was before there was legal sports wagering at tribal casinos. So all of it was illegal. So we found that among those who gambled, 11.5% gambled online. Most of the people that gambled online also gambled in brick and mortar facilities or purchased lottery tickets. 88.5% of the people that reported gambling only gambled in brick and mortar facilities. That also includes purchasing lottery tickets, as there's no online lottery sales in Washington State. Also found that among those who gambled online, 6.3% were at increased risk for problem gambling. Again, this is compared to the 3.5% for all who gambled. So it's almost double the risk for folks who are gambling online to develop, problem gambling issue. So beyond these, there are a lot more findings that will be included in the prevalence report. As I mentioned, we're finalizing the prevalence report and we'll deliver it to the commission and the legislature by the end of October 2022, if not before, maybe earlier. And in the next 2 weeks, I'll be recording a webinar that will have more in-depth findings, and we'll also share that link with the Gambling Commission because there's lots we haven't had time to cover that I think would be of interest to you, especially around co-occurring disorders, the overlap between mental health and substance use issues and gambling. Next slide, please. So now I'm turning to a different topic. As you know, legal sports wagering is either active or pending in at least 36 states. States have been grappling with what, if any, consumer protections to put in place. So in the last 2 slides, I'm going to share some info about possible consumer protections that experts are suggesting that states should be considering as they legalize commercial sports wagering. So some states have already implemented some of these protections. And I want to recognize that much of this information has come to me and been confirmed by Brianne Dora Showall, who is a nationally known expert in the intersection of gambling and problem gambling. And she's been doing a lot of work in this sports wagering space. So these considerations that I'll be sharing are simply for your information. As the State Problem Gambling Program Manager, I think it's important that I share up-to-date information with you about problem gambling related issues. So examples of consumer protections, and I know you will probably be familiar with many of these, but I just want to sort of put them all in one place. They include time limits for people to play, deposit limits, win-loss limits, giving real-time updates on how time and money is spent or lost, always having a clock prominently displayed on the screen so folks, it's easy to lose track of time when you're having fun or involved in something. The ability to self-exclude yourself from the activity, and then having cool-off options where you might be able to self-block for a limited period of time, like I'm done for today, I'll come back tomorrow, so I will block myself for the rest of the day. The ability to unsubscribe to marketing, even though you may keep your account, so that if you aren't necessarily be triggered by texts or emails to say, hey, come play today, when it may be a time when it's not appropriate for you to play. And then also that operators should not be allowed to offer credit lines. I know this is a big discussion, so I'm just going to offer it here as one of the recommendations from experts. Next slide, please. So in addition to requiring vendors to include specific consumer protections, experts also recommend that states, either through legislature or gambling commissions or other appropriate bodies, take these actions as well. Ensure that sports wagering is directly taxed based on a percentage of net revenue. Enact a sports bettors bill of rights. Virginia does have one. I think I may have shared that earlier this year, but if not, I'm happy to share that again in a follow-up with the commission. Include the gold standard for statute language, which means that the funding for problem gambling services will not only cover treatment, but it will include research, prevention, education, outreach and awareness, clinical training, and recovery services. Currently, our budget for the state problem gambling program is 70% for treatment. Everything else falls into the remaining 30%, and that includes and that does not include any money for research, as a very, very small prevention component and a small education, outreach, and awareness component. Another recommendation is that advertising guidelines should include either minimizing or banning advertising around youth or colleges, because we know that youth and colleges, folks that are under 18 and also young adults are at double the risk for problem gambling as adults. And then not to use the term risk-free. You see this a lot with social network gaming, where it'll say it's risk-free, but then as you get into it, there's opportunities to gamble. So it's not necessarily risk-free. Require that the national helpline be included for ads. So in the past, the 1-800-GAMBLER number was for a specific state. Now the National Council on Problem Gambling will have that number available. Anyone can call it, and then they will give them the information to go to a state problem gambling helpline. So either number will work. So just a note, I wanted to add, when I presented this information about consumer protections to the Behavioral Health Advisory Council yesterday, one member did note that many of these consumer control protections could be applied to gambling in general, not just sports wagering, and especially to any online gambling. And I said I'd share that feedback with you today. So my last slide, please. Great, thank you. So on a final positive note, I understand from staff at the commission that over 150 individuals have signed up for the statewide self-exclusion program, which is awesome. And I can report that as of today, the state problem gambling program has received almost $6,000 in forfeited funds. So that process is working, and this will help us serve additional clients needing problem gambling treatment, because we do have a treatment funding gap. So I want to thank you again for the chance to present to you today. This is my contact info, and if there's time, Chair Levy, I can answer a question or two depending on if time permits. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Roxanne. That was a lot of good information. And yeah, we can definitely take questions, I believe, if any of the commissioners or ex officios have comments or questions. Oh, Commissioner Patterson.
Thank you. Thanks, Roxanne, for the presentation. It's very succinct. Like, I know there's a great deal more information that we have because of this prevalence study that we didn't have time to talk about today. But one thing I wish that you would touch on very briefly for commissioners is what the prevalence study taught us about the funding gap for problem gambling services. What did we discover?
Yeah, so the prevalence study, from the prevalence study, we were able to estimate the number of people who are likely that if they were screened, they would likely be at risk for moderate to severe problem gambling. And that came up to around 80,000 people in the state. And this is using a more conservative measure of really those who scored high for a risk for problem gambling. So of the 80,000, we would assume, based on previous research that's been done, that approximately 1 in 10 might be likely to seek services if they knew where services were available and they could afford it or was covered by insurance or, of course, the state problem gambling program. And so that leaves around actually, I think it's about 9,000 people. So of those 9,000, right now, the state problem gambling program is serving 350 people a year. Part of that is probably due to a lack of gambling counselors in many parts of the state. And then part of that is due to we have almost no money in our budget to advertise our services across the state. So it's different than Medicaid, for example, where if we are eventually able to get problem gambling covered by Medicaid, there will be a big process involved to let consumers who are enrolled in Apple Health know that that service is available. So it's kind of a two-piece problem. Even if we were able to have, quadruple our or get 5 times the funding that we need for problem gambling treatment to treat 20% of those folks, which is our estimate of what the state portion should be. That would be around 1,800 people. We don't have the gambling counselors. We are not up to speed on our workforce in any way to be able to meet that need. So what we are looking at is recommending an increase in the amount of treatment funding and for other services, including prevention. And that is based on a proposed model from the Healthcare Authority, but it is the work of the Problem Gambling Task Force is to figure out how that might fit into a recommendation from the task force. So Julia, I don't know if I've quickly covered what you wanted me to say.
Yeah. You've covered it from the state's perspective. Of course, this is a report from the state, and you have concluded that the state is responsible for approximately 20% of the gambling that is currently taking place in the state of Washington. The other 80% of that gambling those opportunities are being provided by the tribes.
Yes, and that's based on the Gambling Commission's information on the website around net gambling receipts.
And then one other quick question, Madam Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
The other quick question is it safe to assume, Roxanne, that the prevalence study has shown us that online gambling would double the risk for gambling problems? Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Almost double. Yeah, it's 3.5 for the general population of folks who gamble, and 6.3% for those who gamble online.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Go ahead.
See, I see another hand up.
Commissioner Reeves.
Is Commissioner Reeves? Okay, Commissioner Reeves?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Out of curiosity, can you share, when you say online gaming, and I'm sorry if I missed this in your presentation, but can you articulate for me the definition of online gaming? Does that include mobile gaming? Does that include virtual reality gaming? Do we have, and maybe that's parsing it down too much, but online to me means like I can log into my computer and work on my laptop to engage in that. But does that also include my mobile phone or virtual gaming space, like in a mall or something like that?
Yeah, so that's great asking for that clarification, and that's something that we really struggled with putting together the questions that we wanted to ask. So what we came to was in the first part of the survey, there is a question under the different types of gambling that folks might be doing that says, have you gambled online in the past 12 months? That does not have a definition. That is available for folks to determine what online gambling is for themselves. But it's very clearly that the question is gambling and not gaming. Further on in the survey, we have, I think, about 7 or 8 questions that everyone answers, not just folks who have said that they gambled, but everyone is asked questions that pertain to online gaming specifically, online gambling specifically, but also that address that gray area of gambling, that gray area that folks in the problem gambling field say, yes, this is gambling, and and I know that the commission has also struggled with that at times, and so we have information from that. I didn't report out on that today, but I will report out on it. We will have it in our report. So in that section, there is a description of this means this, like you're talking about. This means mobile app games, this means, et cetera, et cetera. So there is more of a description in that section. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, it did, if I may, Madam Chair. And the reason I would love to see those definitions is because I do think one of the pending questions that I think will be coming before the commission in the future is currently really this dialogue around the difference between gaming as we know it, right? So you can go onto your mobile device and you can download a game, or it's defined under games, but it very much looks like a gambling activity, right? Whether it's poker or roulette or other things. But because of how it's currently defined, it's considered gaming rather than gambling. I just would like us to be thinking in advance and in a very proactive way as we tackle those challenges and those definitions, what those actually look like and how we as a commission feel about them, so that we can be prepared to address them, particularly with problem gambling in mind. And then I have a follow-up question, Madam Chair, if appropriate.
Yeah, go for it.
My second question is whether or not in the equity lens that you provided in the problem gambling results, whether or not if you had collected demographic data of your survey respondents, and if so, how basically I'm struggling to see how you got from your demographic respondents to an analysis that within communities of color, within melanated majority communities, that these communities are going to suffer or exposed at a higher rate. And so I'm just wondering if you can dig a little bit deeper into that for me, because I think that's
Sure.
a really critical piece of data that you're presenting,
Yes.
and will drive a lot of responses both legislatively and at the commission, and would love to hear more about that.
Yes. To me, that is possibly the most significant finding, actually. I think we suspected it, but we didn't know it for sure. So knowing it is really, really important. I agree. So we collected 10 different demographics, including race and ethnicity. And then that was within the data sample that was weighted so that we had it match the proportion of, I think it was ethnicity, race, age, gender, and there may have been one other. We had it match more closely the demographic of representative of the entire Washington state, so that when you weight a data set, that makes it actually more clear. It can bring out more of those differences, because if we had about, for example, we had about half the number of percent of Hispanic, Latino respondents that we would have if we'd had a whole, that are represented in the state of Washington. So when you weight the survey, we had like 5%, the percentage I think is 10% Spanish speaking within the state. So when you weight that, then those folks who are within that 5%, now they are double weighted so that it actually represents the population of Washington state. So that's the first piece, and that was super important. We did that very early on after we had the data, and that was done by an organization that through the Washington State University Social and Economic Sciences Research Center. So then after we had the weighted sample, then during the data analysis, we could look at that and say, okay, let's look at specific rates. Now, we had a large enough, because we had a large enough group amongst those who were responding who were white or said they were white, that we could easily see what that percentage was of problem gambling for that group, because that group was so large, the denominator. But if breaking out by, Black, African American, Asian, others, those groups and the respondent rate at the problem gambling level, because it's such a small slice of the whole pie, were so small that to say them individually would be meaningless. So we put those groups all together into non-white, which allowed us to very easily see the difference between white problem gambling rate and non-white problem gambling rate. We would have to have a larger survey in order to get down to those specifics. I mean, we have numbers, but using statistical significance, they were too close that we couldn't tell, like their variation was so wide that we couldn't say it was statistically significant. I don't know if that helps. It's getting a little bit into that stats, but
no, it does. As somebody who
Okay.
is into the stats, the statistical significance conversation, I think particularly when we are trying to regulate an industry with an equity lens, I think understanding how you get to the data around how melanated majority communities are participating is super critical, at least for me. It's really important because I want to make sure that we aren't contributing to the systemic assumptions in this process that then further either disadvantage or push farther, folks from opportunity. So I think I'd love for, if you're going to send that over to the commission in further detail. I'd also, I didn't see it in your presentation. It may be in my packet and I just missed it, but would love to see the survey questions and definitions that you provided to the survey sample. And then did you mention that, was it a random sample population that you targeted or was it?
yes, yes.
Okay. Great.
Yeah, it was.
Thank you.
And I can provide more info about that. I would say also that I really agree with what you're saying, because in my longer presentation, I would go into more detail about how this particular finding deeply informs looking at what the state program is doing right now and what is available in the state in terms of not only the number of counselors and where they are, gambling counselors, but also what is their, cultural and relevant experience. And I know just anecdotally from looking at our list of counselors that we definitely need to be increasing the number of clinicians who have lived experience within the populations that they're serving. So it does inform who we recruit. It also informs what our prevention and outreach messaging is, and are we using the best techniques in order to reach the people we need to be reaching? And that's true across prevention. So I just want to
Thank
mention
you
that.
for recognizing that, Roxanne.
Yeah,
I really appreciate
absolutely.
it.
Yeah, it's not just a fun fact. It's also something we really need to focus on. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for asking.
All right, thank you. Is there any other questions for Roxanne, commissioners, ex officios? Okay, is there any public comment? Questions? Doesn't look like it. So thank you very much, Roxanne. That was great. Look forward to seeing the rest through the webinar. And so are there any public comments on anything that we discussed today? All right, doesn't look like it. So at this time, the Gambling Commission will be going into executive session to discuss current and potential agency litigation with legal counsel, including tribal negotiations. We are expected to reconvene the meeting in about an hour, so 11:27 for the sole purpose of adjournment. So thank you, everyone, and we will be going into executive session now.